Oh my goodness, have we got a show for you? We were looking for people to interview who were brand new to international education, and through some friends came across this wonderful couple, Mel and Cole. And my bias going in was assuming that they would be talking a lot about lessons learned, mistakes made, this type of thing, but they are incredibly well prepared, thoughtful planners who exemplify the research ethic that we talk about. And they describe a little bit of their process, getting prepared, researching, interviewing, and they have so many great little tips, things about documentation, even credit cards that I don't know if I would have thought of my first time out. So I commend them and recommend them. So we go through the process of their preparation, recruiting, interviewing, all that, and also their first days and experiences. They are excellent role models as new overseas teachers. They are fun to talk to, and woot woot, they're Canadian. What more can you ask? Mel and Cole are a newlywed couple from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. They love hiking in the mountains with their dog, Nhala. They're also big fans of good food, better coffee, and unreal views. Mel and Cole decided to take a job working abroad to enjoy a year of adventure in their first year of marriage. Cole is secondary trained, but has enjoyed teaching grades 4 to 6 for most of his career. Currently, he teaches AP biology. Mel has spent most of her career working in grades 1 to 3 and is currently working in a grade 2 classroom. Both are working internationally at the same school for the first time. And Mel and Cole also are bloggers, and so you can look for them at The Global Traveler's Wife and The Wondering Learner. The guiding question for this episode is, what has been your experience as a first-time international teaching couple? We covered recruiting, document and finances preparation, onboarding, and first impressions of international teaching. This episode was recorded on September 24th, 2022. I hope you enjoy meeting Mel and Cole as much as we did.
Hello, Melanie and Cole. We are just so excited to have you on the show to hear your first-timers going global story. So would you share with our audience where you ended up in your search to become international teachers?
Yeah, we ended up in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates.
And that's a place not too far away from where Audrey and we were in Saudi for many years, so we know the territory, you might say.
Yeah, I think Saudi Arabia is only a few hours away, so yeah.
Hop, skip, and a jump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And boy, did we love going to the UAE because it was so open.
Ooh.
Yeah.
It's all relative, isn't it?
It really is. Yeah.
All right. So basically this whole interview is going to be a big going global story. But we're wondering if you have a little one to kind of get the ball rolling.
Honestly, the first time we went driving was absolutely bonkers. It was crazy.
Okay.
Yeah, I learned you can't take a left here. I'm not sure if it's the same in Saudi. Everything's traffic circles. So even if something's across the street, you drive 3-4 times the distance to get to it.
Yeah.
And so dealing with that frustration was one of our first letting it go little bits.
So what you're saying is it's like a divided road with a median? Yeah. So it's not that you're not allowed to turn left, you physically can't turn left.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're not allowed as well, but
okay.
I mean, you could try it. I mean, most of the vehicles here are meant to go dooning, and so I'm pretty sure they could handle that little bump, but I haven't seen one take it yet.
Yeah. Do people in Saudi, would go up on the right so that they could pass everyone to turn left? I'm guessing that's not going to happen because you guys can't turn left anyways, but
yeah,
it was such a...
I've heard Saudi Arabia was kind of like that for driving.
Yeah.
That we're somewhere in between Saudi Arabia and somewhere else.
I mean, people make their own roads here all the time. Wherever they see a patch of sand, it becomes a road. So.
Exactly. Yeah. I just used to close my eyes and tilt my chair back since I wasn't allowed to drive anyway. So that's, might as well chill.
Oh my. All right. Well, that brings back memories of driving in many different countries. So that's for sure. All right. Well, our guiding question is, what has been your experience as a first-time international teaching couples, so that's a big one. Why don't we kind of start at the beginning here? So how did you first learn about overseas teaching?
Yeah, so that was me. I guess you could say I'm the one that dragged Melanie.
Kicking and screaming.
Kicking and screaming. A while back, I had a group of friends, and there was this one girl in that group of friends who was an international teacher. She was teaching in Hong Kong, and I always thought that was pretty cool. And I didn't think much of it, but this individual just had a great experience. And even when her experiences weren't great, she kind of learned to learn from them. And so I had started looking, before I even had met Melanie, at different schools, and was kind of looking at what my options were. And then unfortunately, COVID happened. And so things went on pause, and I had met Melanie. So I probably should switch the order of those and decided that going international wasn't in the books at that time. However, when I met Melanie, I had told her that before we begin our great big life together as a couple, kids, etc., that I really wanted to try international teaching before
Jumping into a different life almost.
Yeah. So one life like this, and then another life with kids.
Yeah.
And then we're learning that maybe they'll go together. We don't know yet.
Right. Yeah. I mean, at our school in Saudi, the daycare was right on campus, and the rule was you had to go back to school when the kid was 6 weeks old. You didn't have an option. And so basically that was, integrated right in. But the hospital care was fantastic. Everything led to making it very, very easy for you to have kids.
I think the same thing here.
Yeah.
They
Same as
say
here.
45 days, which I think is 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So they do that, and then Mel would get required breastfeeding breaks, things like that. And then
nannies.
Exactly. A lot of people hire nannies. Exactly. So it's easier in a lot of ways than it might otherwise be. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what caught your fancy about going overseas then, Cole?
I've always been a traveler, kind of. I have a really good friend who works for an airline back home, and he always needed someone to go with him, and I was the yes person. So in university, I remember playing squash with this friend of mine, and he would say, "Hey, do you want to go to Argentina? But you have to skip your bio lab." And I'm like, "Yep, I'll make that work."
Yes, let's.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Cole's definitely a yes person.
Yeah. So
I love it. That's so
and then
great.
I got hooked, and multiply that now with when you travel, you get paid for it. And then I don't know if you've been to Edmonton or Calgary, and you have the mountains right there. And I think what makes them and keeps them beautiful is that you visit them less frequently, every 2 weeks, every month. And so they stay amazing. And I'm finding that with our current place, instead of just having a whirlwind 2 weeks vacation and then leaving, we get to spread that out over a year or two or whatever the amount is.
Yeah.
And you're always
Savoring the experience a
you're
little more.
savoring it. Yeah. It matters more.
That's true. And you get fresh eyes for, what you appreciate back home.
Oh, yeah.
Very true.
And what's excellent about your location is it's such a flight hub. You can jump on a plane there and go any place. So that's another excellent point. All right, let's move into recruiting mode. If you could share just what was your starting point and then the steps that followed going through that process.
Yeah, Mel took the lead for the most part. She's a highly organized individual. I'm more like a free-flighting bird. And so she did a lot of the research and had found that an Alberta international school was probably the best thing we could aim for. If we didn't stay, it allowed us to jump on any kind of a pay grid back home because we kept our curriculum the same. And then it also made the transfer as teachers to be easy because even though we're stepping into a new school, it's the same curriculum. Even look out the windows, the same school, more or less. And we kind of went from there, but then we were shooting for Germany.
Yeah.
And I had a very random experience, which I guess plays into my personality, where I went to a Russian spa with a friend's birthday. And
as one does.
Spa. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they hit you with these little stick leaf things. And while you're in the sauna recovering from your very weird experience, I happened to meet an individual who used to be a head of school at the current school that we're at, and was now a realtor. He said his time in education was done. He gave all that he had to give. And we were just, sharing stories. And I told him we were highly debating going to Frankfurt International or Vienna International School. And that's where we're kind of placing our chips. And he said, well, have you thought about Abu Dhabi? And my response to him was, wasn't that where Odie got sent by Garfield? And then he just got the ball rolling. And then it happened very quickly. Him being an inside connection, we were interviewed within 3 or 4 days.
Wow.
That was that.
That's awesome. And so, really, your main criterion was Alberta curriculum. That's very clever. I don't think I would have thought of that. Now, 30 years ago, I don't know if they would have had an Ontario. I'm from Ontario. I don't know if they would have had Ontario curriculum schools, but even a Canadian curriculum, it just didn't occur to me. I just kind of was like, I went to the Queen's Fair and it was just like, okay, let's see, where the world takes me. But any other thoughts about what type of school or region or any other pieces there? Maybe Mel, you can answer that.
I mean, I just wanted somewhere not frigid. To be honest, I was tired of Arctic winters. Yeah. And it was funny because Cole said, no, I wanna enjoy a little bit of winter still. Let's go somewhere in Europe. And I said, well, maybe we could consider this one. There's one in Mexico in Guadalajara. And he said, no, that's too hot. And little did he know, we ended up at a place that was probably about 20 degrees warmer.
Yeah, that was my bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's dry. So it's not too, it's not comparable. Yeah.
So you all definitely did take a different path. And one of the big themes running through our show is research and looking at all the possibilities. So I'm wondering, did you all learn about the tax situation in Germany? Did that ever come up, that you learned about how high the taxes could be and such?
Yeah, we looked into all that stuff. We looked into actually our salary played a big role for us because we want to start our life pretty soon with kids and we want to keep traveling and that kind of stuff too. And for us, a big thing I think for both of us was that we would be able to take home a lot of what we were making and where we're at, we can do that.
So yeah, when we were looking at Germany, we did see the higher taxation rate and you're forced, just like you are back in Alberta, to pay into a pension plan. And then what we had, and I'll be honest, preliminarily discovered was that meant we might be just drawing from 2 or more pensions whenever retirement came. And then we knew we had to get an international advisor to learn how that played in our retirement. And that's the step we're currently in, figuring out how to take, because we've decided to live off just one of our salaries and bank the other one. And that's in Durham. So do we leave it in Durham, move it to Canadian? How do we invest it? And then how do we keep, as your followers will find out, if you teach internationally, coming from Canada, a non-resident tax status, you're not paying taxes in both, depending on which country you go to. So making sure that our investments didn't break any rules that the CRA has, which has been, honestly, a lot of questions and less answers, but we're still figuring that stuff out.
Right. Well, along those lines, I have the perfect person for you to check into, which is Andrew Hallam. Have you heard of him?
No, we've got a bunch of names in a WhatsApp, which we had never used before we came here.
Yeah.
He has made a big study. He's Canadian. He's made a big study of the whole international finance situation, and he has a Facebook group. Give him a little plug right here. It's called International Teachers and Expats Finance, something like that.
Well, that might be the one you were given. Yeah. Is he the one that charges, it's like $189 up front or something?
No, he doesn't charge.
Nope.
No.
Then even better.
Yeah. He
sounds like the perfect person.
He loves to talk about this stuff and help people out. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I can give you more information on that when we get off air.
Perfect.
So you didn't actually go to a job fair, right?
We did
online.
Okay.
Yeah, because of COVID, they hadn't set anything up where they would normally in Calgary. So we weren't able to attend a physical one, but we did attend one online through Scroll
or ISS. That they're combined, I think, at one point and have separated again.
Yeah.
So we had joined, was it Scroll?
It was Scroll that we went through,
And so we did a large one. And it's funny that you talk about Saudi, because I'm pretty sure it was Saudi.
Yeah.
We put our resumes out there and the guy immediately got back to us and said, please don't apply. The visa situation between Canada and Saudi this year is a little difficult, but it has since taken care of itself since then. But he was primarily looking for American teachers at that moment. But that was our very first experience international. Something we hadn't even thought about was passport issues going across borders.
Yeah, there's so many things, aren't there?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people out there to support you, You can definitely get the information, although perhaps less so about Canadian tax situation. But Mel, what were you going to say? Sorry, I interrupted you.
I think it was honestly, too, just kind of funny that it was my first experience at looking at time zones, too. I had no clue what was happening. I was awake so early. We were up at 3 a.m. and I had no idea why. I was like,
And we
I
were
should
dressed
not be. I should
professionally
not be awake at this time.
and
Right.
Yeah.
getting ready. And thank goodness I'm bald, because if I had to spend any time on my hair, I wouldn't admit it.
That's probably
Yeah.
the first time I've heard someone say that. Thank goodness I'm bald. I love it.
Well, tell us, what was your experience just in a virtual interview? What was that like? And then how did the system work that you would know at 6 o'clock you had an interview or 8 o'clock? How did that work? First, start off with just what was your experience in the interviews?
It was interesting. I think our experience overall was just a neutral experience. I wouldn't say it was negative or positive. I think because of COVID, a lot of things had changed, and they were looking for very specific teachers in specific regions that we weren't able to help them out with. But the way they had done it was they had set up rooms where we could basically apply to have an interview. And then if they looked at our profile and were accepted, then we would be able to go into an interview situation.
We had noticed that China, the whole region of China, was desperate for teachers. We got way, it was overwhelming, to be honest, the amount of requests. In physical person, I can address a person one-on-one and have a conversation, and then person A or B would see I'm talking and not address me. But with the online platform, you're just seeing bing, 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 bing pop up. And,
Wow.
you're nervous about like, oh my goodness, are they going to think I'm totally ignoring them? Because obviously their platform, or at least based on what we could see, can't tell you're in an interview, or maybe they were just trying to get in a queue.
Oh.
I still don't know if that was what was going on, but it was a feature of that.
So that's some feedback for Scroll to say, dudes, this is really stressful when someone's in an interview. If they could figure out a way to block that notifications.
Yeah, especially and I'd say Mel and I are a little like older. We've been already teachers for quite a while, and going into an interview process, like the way you look matters. You gotta look professional, and even how you handle that. Don't be late. Ideology of it. So when you see all those requests, and you're like, oh, goodness, I hope they don't think I'm ignoring them.
Right.
But to answer your previous question about when we did select an interview, and let's even talk about Abu Dhabi, which was outside of Scroll, when the interviewer had set up our interview, she had done it with a Google Calendar. And I'll admit, we were uncertain if we were going to nail that time or not. Because daylight savings plays a role. Did she pick the right time, et cetera, versus us? So we went into it with a bated breath, kind of half expecting that we were either late or not.
Or very early.
Yeah. And so we, on the day of our interviews, made sure that we had our computers ready for a scramble if needed. Yeah. If it was going to be 3 a.m. again or 3 p.m.
My goodness.
It all worked out.
It
Google
did.
Calendar seems to have a pretty integrated focus on time zones, and I was pretty happy with that.
Yeah, we were fortunate. It worked out.
So how many interviews did you have in all?
We only had a few because, again, and if your followers are listening, when a school offers you a job, they really don't give you a lot of time to say yes or no. And we were nervous because Abu Dhabi gave us a job very early in the process.
Very quickly, yeah.
But we were looking at two other schools in Germany, in Vienna or Frankfurt. There's a bunch of them. And we really wanted to give them a chance to see what their pay grade offers were. But we felt pigeonholed.
Yeah, and I think this offer that we were given was very positive looking too. And we knew some people who had been at the school that we're at now. And I think it really helped having that inside eye into how it would work, and being our first experience being at a school that was semi-familiar was really important for me because I'm not a traveler. This is honestly my first time being international at all. I've never traveled outside of North America. And so I wanted a little bit of a home, I guess.
So we rejected quite a few interviews after, and we still, to be honest, don't know if that was the right move. Like, should we have taken them and just made sure our names were known? Or was it smart to say, hey, we've actually found a position. We won't be taking interviews at this time.
Right.
To this day, Scroll and ISS still send us.
Yeah, we get
people
lots
on the
still.
platform. We'll still send, hey, are you still looking?
Well, make you feel good anyway.
It does, yeah.
Right.
There's a lot of coaching that goes along.
Yeah, I would say so.
Even schools in our region, Mel and I have both received offers to leave the current school and go to a different one. And I've heard that's normal if they have the right experience.
Yeah.
Because
job hopping in the first few months of your
seems to just be
job,
maybe not normal, but isn't unheard of.
Yeah, it's not unheard of, I would say. Yeah, that would be fair.
It's like so totally different from our experience where David, I'm sure it was the same for you, that you'd go to the fair and you'd have all these interviews and you didn't know. And you didn't even find out, like you didn't even, so the situation was they had to go back to their board, school board, and find, and present all the candidates that they had interviewed and ask the board what they thought and get, final approval from the board. And then they'd get back to you like a couple months later. I mean, it was this whole stressful.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's like completely the opposite. Clearly it is a teacher's market.
Within a week, we had even our contract signed.
Yeah.
And
it was a 24-hour period. We had an email saying, hey, we'd like to offer you a job.
But let me be very clear. That is not in any way, shape, or form representative of the organization of schools. That's probably the most and only organized thing we've seen so far, is the actual hiring. Past that, it's been, they have a word here, and I'm sure it was the same in Saudi.
Nhala.
Yeah. So you just shared a bunch of lessons learned, and that job switching, once you get to a place, that totally blows my mind that might be going on. In your situation of getting the job offer and a quick turnaround, that has been going on for a while, and Audrey and I, we've been through that. So it isn't new. It's just these schools more than ever. They've got their list. They need to fill it. It's highly competitive. There's so many more schools today, thousands more than back in the 90s when we got our starts. So that's definitely how that goes. And that's an interesting tidbit about the calendar function, because we're doing the same thing in setting up our interviews. And I think that's a great idea, just to have your laptop open the hour before or maybe the hour after, and you're just ready if something went wrong with the Google Calendar system, to be ready for that interview, just in case you got the timing a little off. So let's look at some folks that are younger than you. They've never gone overseas, just like you all. What's one big piece of advice that you would offer them going through the recruiting process regarding interviews, whether they're face-to-face or virtual? What kind of lesson learned that you can share?
I think ask questions is honestly the biggest thing. Ask every single question you can think of. You might think it is a ridiculous, stupid question, but I think I would have asked way more, and I would have maybe asked for clearer answers. And I think almost being demanding is a good thing for a lot of these international schools, because I think if you don't ask, you won't get anything. Like, they are not going to offer up anything unless you do ask for it. So I think to be very clear with your questions is a huge thing, and come prepared for asking those questions.
Yeah, Mel and I had we'll call it a leg up, that I happened to meet the individual who used to run the school. And he had kind of guided us on some of the things, even our housing situation. We had requested, 2 rooms for if we have visitors, and then a certain area in Abu Dhabi that we wanted to live. What the housing allowance is, I'm not sure if other schools that you guys have been to have given you a housing allowance to help pay for your room and board. It sounds like it. Knowing what that number is, doing a little bit of research, because when we landed, we had met quite a few of the younger teachers, and it was younger teachers who were maybe a little bit more shocked about the whole process. Or my favorite is we have a couple teachers that had come with us that had packed pots and pans in their suitcases, and they, Abu Dhabi,
because they just didn't know
that you can buy these from.
Yeah, they had no idea. So I think doing your research too is just big, right? So yeah,
definitely. I think it sounds like you guys did a lot of good research, so good on you. And like you said, with it being a teacher's market right now, I think that teachers, even people new to the international experience, should feel confident to, like you say, ask those probing questions, because it sounds like to a large extent, you're in the driver's seat. You have a lot of different options. And so feel confident, go ahead and ask those probing questions. That's really good advice. Once you signed your contract, what was the onboarding like? You said that the contract was the biggest, clearly they were very organized with all of the hiring. And then, so what about the onboarding, like visas, health insurance, learning the inside scoop?
We made the mistake. I don't know if there was a mistake. We judged our situation based on what home was like. So our contract had laid out visa, healthcare, dental care. However, when we got here, we've learned that those things don't come into play for a few months, or they take some time to get set up. And so we both have we're a month into teaching our healthcare.
Something called an Emirates ID, which is tied into your visa.
And we've just got this, and there are some other people who have to provide further paperwork who we know they're scrambling to get things that they could have got at home if they would have known ahead of time. Mel and I together, I think maybe a little OCD on my part there.
Yeah.
I overdid the paperwork. I brought multiple copies of our degrees and you name it, 3 copies of our marriage certificate. And that wasn't stipulated, but we had felt that was a good idea. And it turns out we needed every single one of those things. Where others have had to get things re-authenticated by the embassy and certified, or by Global Affairs Canada, just to make sure everything was good. But that takes time. And in that time frame, we're going to be going to England to visit my sister, who met her partner there and had a kid, and I haven't seen them since COVID. But other people who thought they'd be traveling during the October break can't, because then their visa will expire and they'll have to come back in, and it causes an issue. So their expectations of being able to take their first week-long trip to somewhere amazing or fun now, and I'm not saying UAE is not amazing or fun, but I don't think it was what they had thought would be happening.
Yeah. I think it was a little bit of a scramble. I think there's too many hands in the pot sometimes in our situation. Too many people are handling kind of the same thing, and we don't know who to hand things off to. And so I think it's kind of funny, because we're trying to figure out who actually handles this or who handles that part of it. We're trying to figure out who to give certain paperworks to. And it's been a little bit of a interesting experience that way.
So if you ever want to learn about bureaucracies, I say go teach in international schools.
Well, particularly, some are more equipped than others, but So just to clarify, what you are saying is you brought multiple notarized copies?
Yes.
Thank you.
So I think that's key for people to understand. You didn't just jump on a photocopier. You got them notarized, and that sounds like that was huge. So good on you.
Yeah, and I would say
that would be my advice to everyone is because when you send it off to Global Affairs Canada, this is for Canadians, or whatever the American version would be, they are backlogged because of COVID for 90 days.
Right.
They usually work within 13 days, just to give you a scope there. So you're dealing with, it took us 4.5 months, 5 months to get our degrees authenticated.
Right.
And then goes through the notary process. And then actually when it went to the UAE embassy, it only took a week. I'll be honest, the UAE embassy was not the slow one in the process. It was the home embassy.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So start early.
Yes, right.
And then, well, if Mel's parents are listening, this is where they'll find out. We decided to, in secret, get married 3 months earlier to help our paperwork go through.
Yeah, we had to.
Yeah,
but, our parents don't know that. So maybe they won't be the ones listening to your podcast. So we did get married in July, but we held a quaint, cute little service in our friend's backyard in April, just to get the marriage certificate paperwork going. Yeah. And it's still not here, actually. So even though it was smart, 3 months ahead of time wasn't enough.
Wow.
It turns out we should have done it sooner.
That's because of COVID.
So that'd be my advice, is if people are going, and Abu Dhabi has opened so that non-married couples can live together now. But just before we came, it wasn't. But maybe Saudi probably still requires that.
No doubt.
Get married legally is the big word there. Well beforehand, still go through your ceremony, etc., whatever you're planning to do, like we did. But it made things a lot easier.
Yeah.
Wow. Yet another really good foresight on your part. Even especially for people who haven't gone overseas before. Good for you coming up with that.
We're trying to guesstimate the best we can.
Yes.
Well, you're very good at it.
So another lesson learned, one is to not wait and just see what happens. Just say any opportunity for you to reach out to whoever your contact person is. And what I'm hearing is it sounds like maybe at your school there might be more than one, but to see if you can find one person who's your go-to person in that HR office. And then just like you're saying, when it comes to the documentation, if they ask for one, get multiple and get them notarized for sure. And I think that's the whole idea about the health insurance. One of our podcasts is with an international accountant and helps people with financial planning and all. And he talks also about health insurance. And is it covering you just in your country? Is it going to cover you outside? Is it going to cover you back in your home country? To really get those details, but you've added a new kind of way to look at that to say exactly which day will this start? Because if it is going to be delayed, that leaving your home country, you need to make sure you still have coverage to get you up to that transfer date. One big question for people clearly is housing. And I suspect you all have learned and talked to different people about different schools and how they do it. And you were just saying some schools, yes, they give you an allowance. Once you land, hopefully they connect you with a real estate agent. But then there can be schools that have their own housing. For you all, what was your situation and did you have some choice?
We didn't know what the places were. Luckily, like I said, or Mel had said, we had kind of known of some people that had been at our school previously. And so we had known the area. So in this case, Khalifa City in Abu Dhabi, where some of the houses were set up that the school had owned. We had also known of an area where they had good rental agreements with. And so we had taken the advice of people that had been here for a few years and chosen with a lot of trust an area that would be good for us. And I think we nailed it. Yeah. But like you had said, going into a blind, I think the school, and through no fault of their own, it makes sense. We'll just make whatever's easiest for them. And so they'll place you, and it could be randomly or with whatever's left over. And sometimes that isn't always the best experience, especially if you're choosing to not have a car, because Abu Dhabi is not a great city laid out for transportation of busing. I had explained it to friends that we had just FaceTime with last week that there's large patches of desert in between the suburbs here. And so it's not side to side to side like you would expect back home or whatever city in North America. So a car is relatively essential for if you're going to be going out day to day to day. That being said, like Ubers and taxis are cheap here, but they require some further planning to make it work effectively. So the area we're in, we technically wouldn't really need a car to get around compared to some other people. And we can tell from their thoughts that they're a little frustrated about that.
Yeah.
And that's a reminder. Transportation is another huge one because it's a big deal to have to buy a car. You land in a new place. You don't know your trusted dealership. You're probably going to buy used. You don't know if the previous owners take care of it. So that is something for folks as they look out at different schools, different cities. What's the transportation system? If you're going to have to buy a car, or if you're like in Vietnam, people buy scooters.
Awesome.
What does that look like? And who's going to help you? Who on staff is going to go with you and help you language-wise, but also the ins and outs of trying to buy an expensive vehicle. So that's a big deal.
But this is true because, as soon as a vendor sees that you're a foreigner, the price just went up. Like
it does.
Guaranteed. You got to have that local person that can help you out with language and also just navigating the whole situation. Yeah. So any other insights now that you've been there a couple of months, first international school, living in a new country, the whole shebang? Any other insights you want to share?
Yeah, I would say, and this one always isn't possible, is if you have a bit of cash on hand with you to be ready for that. So Mel and I, we came here with more than enough money just in case things went wrong, the access to credit cards and some cash.
Yeah. Make sure your credit cards are working when you come overseas.
Yeah.
We had a minor issue with one of ours. It was solved within the night, but from landing, but it was still a little bit of a stress. And so I think it's important just to be ready for that.
It's a good piece of advice is two-factor authentication.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of people leaving their school who have their phone numbers from whatever country or place they're at. They use those numbers to secure their bank accounts, emails. I knew about this, which I'm lucky about. I used to work for Apple and had helped a lot of people who had made these mistakes with their devices. And so we kept our phone numbers for an extra week into the country to switch all our two-factor authentication over. And we had prepared people back home to be our two-factor authenticators.
Nice.
Some of our services would only work. So whether it's a parent or a really trusted friend, have that on hand. And I had actually stayed up late one night with my friend Kellen back home, had given him access to all of my stuff because if he robs me blind, so be it. He's one of my groomsmen, really trust him. And it makes it easy that if we should go back home, I don't have to worry about my Abu Dhabi number being something I have to bring back with me. I can use his number. So I ultimately chose to use a friend back home for that kind of leaving the international school scene. I'm kind of thinking one step past getting here. But for your followers, it'd be something that Mel and I made a list. And even today, I had forgot about my MasterCard. My banking I had switched over, but today we bought some IKEA furniture and it wanted to send a text message to my Canadian number to confirm the purchase. After this call, I'll spend a couple hours on hold. I bought a Skype account for $6 a month that has unlimited calling to Canada, and I'll call and figure that out. But oops, that's only one thing I got caught on. So I can't imagine other people who have CRA or banking in other places or whatever other services you need your phone number for.
That's a really good insight. It's very helpful.
Oh my gosh, that's something we're going to have to find more information and have someone come on and talk about that, because you're exactly right. What is the phone number that's connected to your credit card? But you're also saying potentially with your bank account and such. And there is that transition that you're arriving, you're using your credit cards, and then you need to switch over to your local number and then getting credit cards locally where you are as well. So one thing I can throw in there, that at least in North America, you can get credit cards that don't have overseas charges. That's something to think about as well in that transition. One of the things that I'm reminded in, Audrey, I can't remember his name, but in a lot of schools you find out who's the fixer, who's the person.
We know that
we have one of
I'm not
those.
gonna say his name. I don't know in our school, but we know that.
Okay.
Yeah.
As soon as you say that word, the fixer, the title.
He knows where the bodies are buried.
Yeah.
So, that's what people say.
Yeah. Our guy was Matar, David.
Yes, Matar.
Yeah.
And so there, you've kind of got your people on the inside of the school that you know who's the go-to person, who's really going to make it work. But if you can find that fixer who's the person on the outside, the wheeler dealer, and if you're in a country that if you've got certain documentation and things that maybe the school isn't going to do for you, that's where the fixer can come in and kind of really grease the pathway to make sure that you don't go spend 4 hours in a government agency, that he or she will just go do it for you at a fee, of course, but it's well worth it.
Yep, sounds about right. Yeah, you'll learn who they are, and anyone who's following your podcast, the name will come up. And as we've had some friends do, you buy them like a nice gift of not Timbits. You can buy Timbits here, but anything that makes their life easier, you can.
You can. There's Tim Hortons here.
Oh my gosh.
See them everywhere. Yeah,
There must be a lot of
They're
connects
quite
over
popular.
there. That's great.
Oh, they are. Yeah.
Well, thank you too for coming in and I call them lessons learned, nuggets of info. You've shared some really terrific insights, and you've painted the big picture of going through this process as new international educators. So thank you for coming on the podcast with us.
Yeah, thank you, David.
Yeah,
Thank you
Audrey.
so much. So Mel and Cole have been kind enough to allow us to share their contact information. So if anybody has questions for them, if you're thinking about going global and wondering, what the experience is like, or you just have some specific questions around it, please write to mel.idema, that's mel.idema @gmail.com.
Thank you for joining us today on Educators Going Global.
You can find this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and all the other usual suspects.
Please subscribe, like us, and leave a review on Apple and Spotify, and let your teaching friends know about us so we can grow our community.
Please reach out at educatorsgoingglobal@gmail.com and join our Facebook group, Educators Going Global, if you have ideas, comments, or wish to share a Going Global story of your own.
You can also find us on Instagram at Educators Going Global.
Please visit our website as well, www.educatorsgoingglobal.com. All our podcast episodes are on there by topic, along with blog posts, Going Global stories, and our ever-growing resource library. For now, this is Audrey
And David.
inviting you to travel,
Teach.
and connect with us.